Hi everyone, welcome to Graciellie Makes Cards. Today's cards feature a beautiful digital leafy image by Graciellie design. I have 3 cards using color wash backgrounds, but each one finished off slightly differently. I'm working with Magello Mission Gold watercolors on Canson 140 pound cold press. I begin by creating the 3 backgrounds by wetting the watercolor paper and then dropping in color. I'm working with reds and pinks on one panel. On another panel that I'm not showing, I'm using various shades of purple, blues, and reds. My last panel is done in shades of green. In the end, I ended up cutting this panel out. To add further depth to both the pink and the green panels, I added Nouveau Shimmer powders. To do this, I first let my color wash panel completely dry. Dropping the powders onto a very wet panel would just create a solid mass of color. I used a distress sprayer to lightly spritz the panel and then tapped on the powder sparingly. The panels were left to dry completely before my next step. I even made sure that there was no moisture left by lightly touching the panel with my hand. If I had felt any kind of coolness, I would have let it dry further. The image and sentiments were printed directly onto the color washed panel. I discovered something interesting about my printer. Although I could not print on a full-size sheet of the heavier watercolor paper, when it is cut down to an A2 size, it goes through the printer just fine. A strange but wonderful discovery that opens the doors to many possibilities when working with digital stamps. Something to try out if your printer does not accept the heavier watercolor paper. To create variation between the 3 cards, I decided to fussy cut the leafy image from the green background. I printed the sentiment, "There is beauty in simplicity," onto 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock. Using Simon Says Stamps Wave Stencil, I applied Nouveau Crackle Mousse. I am using a couple of different tools to apply the paste. The smaller palette knife is used to apply the mousse around the sentiment area. In this way, I can avoid covering up any of the words. The panel dries quickly, but being on lighter cardstock, it is definitely warped. I place it underneath something heavy to help flatten it out. While waiting for my panel, I decided to foam mount my leaves. And once it was mounted, I didn't like leaving the background corner as I first intended to do, and ended up fussy cutting the image out completely. With my cutting done, or so I thought, I did not like the interior background pieces left in the image. I used a craft knife to remove these pieces. It was, however, a little bit challenging because I was cutting through not just the heavy watercolor paper, but also the foam. There were definitely imperfections in the cutting. I used a dark green zig marker and touched up any of the white areas, and all those imperfections disappeared. The stenciled panel was die cut with a rectangular stitch die and then adhered to a Neenah 110 pound card base. The foam-backed leafy image was attached in a way so that it would frame the sentiment. I die cut the pink color wash card and a piece of gold matte cardstock with Simon Says Stamps A2 thin frames. The inner portion of the panel was adhered to black cardstock that was attached to an A2 size card base. Both the inner panel and the thin gold frame were mounted on black sheet foam before being glued to the card. The bluish-purple color wash card was simply die cut using a stitched rectangle die and mounted on black cardstock before being adhered to the A2 size card base. All 3 cards were embellished with sequins. After laying them out, they were attached using Nouveau Smooth Precision Glue. This is a great glue for attaching embellishments. The nib of the glue pen depresses when it is applied to the cardstock, leaving a small droplet of glue. All of the sequins were topped up using Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. Morning Dew dries clear, leaving a jewel-like effect. And that wraps up these cards featuring Graciellie Designs Simplicity digital images printed on color wash backgrounds. As always, I appreciate your visit. Thank you so much.